So here we are. This is part 2 of our support videos for today. These videos are being uploaded to help you prepare and study for the final exam. Now, mainly this is because we weren't able to meet on Monday, so I just wanted to give a little bit of extra support. You can even use these just to help advance your ability to analyze any sort of reading that you have to do for a university class. But these ones are specifically targeted at our test, our final exam tomorrow. So we've just finished looking at section 1, the reading and annotation through our literary windows. Notice that this is going to be worth about 20 points on the final test tomorrow. The main difference will be that it's going to be a different story that's going to appear in the left-hand column. Now, if you scroll down, you can see that everything's finished. Now I've also included, don't forget to include your summary and insights of the story once you've completed the reading. Now I encourage you, go ahead and read through this. The document is uploaded on VIU Learns. Okay, the second section here is this new idea that we've been working with through the second half of our course, which is the idea of triangulation. So this is called a triangulation reading activity. So let's read the prompt here. Using the reading and triangulation strategies that we've learned in class, you will create a triangle model that prepares an old school presentation, an OSP, from the 3 provided perspectives. So you have a few different choices you can make here, and you're going to have to try and fit them into our framework of the old school presentation. So here are our sources. The first one's going to be the new short story. Second one's going to be the 6 biases and 6 fallacies. This is the worksheet we did as our critical reading assignment 2, which was, I think, back in week 11 or 12. You can also choose to talk about resiliency skills, as we've been learning about them throughout the semester, as supported by Duckworth, Dweck, and Dolan. So obviously we've got the grit idea here. This is growth mindset through Dweck, and Dolan is effective presentation skills. Any of those can be a supporting vector within your triangulation. And the final possible set of ideas that you can use in your triangulation are the persuasive tools that we've learned. So you can see there are 4 different choices. The only one that's mandatory is the short story. And so you will be able to pick the other perspectives to fill out your triangulation. So if we go down, you'll notice that I will provide you on the test, these vectors will actually be empty, and then you'll have to put in your choices. So I've put in position 1, the short story. Position 2, vector 2, I'm going to talk about growth mindset and grit. And then vector 3, I'm going to use persuasion. If you wanted to, you could put biases and fallacies in one of these vectors instead. Okay, so then down below, there's a prompt that's going to ask you to explain your selections. This doesn't have to be too expansive. 1 or 2 sentences will be sufficient. Let's see what I've done. So obviously I've filled this out as though I was a student. So for the short story will be used as a central focus to promote old growth forest protection. So I've picked up on a connection there. I've done my brainstorming and I thought this story is talking about cutting down all the trees, so I might use it in a presentation that talks about protecting forests. Based on what the new short story is that you'll read tomorrow, you'll have to come up with the core idea for your old school presentation. Next, I've talked about my second vector here, this idea of growth mindset and grit. So when we fight to protect Mother Earth, we must be gritty and open-minded. These skills should also be utilized by all stakeholders to view this issue through a new lens. So I'm kind of leading forward. I've gone from my core concept, protection, to how we're going to do that. These are kind of our methods, being gritty, being open-minded, and trying to promote this view for all the stakeholders, not just people on my side of the argument. Finally, I'm going to move into my third vector, which is persuasion. Persuasion, the listed methods above will be placed within my OSP to hopefully convince the audience of the validity of my position. And you can see I've even targeted the specific types of persuasion that I'm going to use. Ethos, so that's the emotional connection. Logos, that's logic. Metaphor, scarcity, and consensus. So those are all different useful tools of persuasion that we've learned in class already. They're going to be part of my third vector. Then I go down. Now you can see I was pressed for time, so I didn't even fill in the brainstorming box. That's okay. You can use this box if you need to, or you can jump straight into your ideas if you need to. Now, when you're writing the final, always be aware of what the points are for each section and think about how you can earn enough points. So obviously, this will be worth a few points picking my vectors. You might get 2 or 3 points for that. Then this basic description here of each one, again, you're probably going to get 2 or 3 points for completing that section. If you do the brainstorming box, again, 2 or 3 points for that section. And then obviously the majority of your points are going to come in for writing your outline. And so you can see that I've gone into my outline here. I put down the different portions, the hook, the background, what my thesis will be. And as I'm going, you'll also notice that I'm trying to include different kind of side notes here that explain what I'm going to do in terms of using my presentation skills. So here I'm indicating, so let's just go through, I'll just talk through these first few pieces here. So hook. So I'm going to start with a metaphor. So obviously that's the very first persuasive tool that I'm including. And I'm starting with a question to engage my audience. Would you cut down the walls of your house to create a fire to heat yourself for one night? So that's the metaphor here. I'm saying that, kind of making the comparison that cutting down trees is this kind of a one-night solution to keeping ourselves warm. So you can see what the comparison is. It kind of personalizes it to the audience through the use of the question. And then let's carry on. This is the power of the story. So I've actually, as a student now, if this would kind of be my editing process, I've got to go back and remind myself what the actual proper name of the story is. I don't want to get that wrong. One Pine Hill. Okay, perfect. So I do also recommend that you go through and double check your ideas and make corrections. So, and then don't forget that when we're looking at the titles of stories or even journal articles, we italicize them. That's APA standard. So I've made some editing corrections there. That's good. That'll make my final submission clearer and more accurate to the request. So this is the power of the story, One Pine Hill. Short-sighted consumption is the same as burning your house for one night's heat. So I've kind of made the connection between our story and my metaphor. Now I move into the background section. So I'm just going to tidy this up here, make it bold just to be consistent. So in my background now, I would go on to explain my own family history, that there's a long connection with logging in my own family. In fact, my generation would be the 4th generation of loggers. And then I explained some personalized stories here to kind of help also engage my audience, that my grandpa Art taught me about the forest when I was young. Ironically, he loved the forest, but he facilitated cutting down many trees as a production manager in a logging camp up in the Nimkish Valley on the north end of the island, actually. And then I could highlight that this brings out irony and often this kind of hubris, this kind of conundrum. So I could even rope in some of my literary terms here if I was feeling particularly creative. Your teacher would obviously appreciate that. And then this should be a question. So I'm actually using this as a little bit of an editing process, which is a good thing to do before you finally submit your test. You should always edit and complete it. Now we're moving into the thesis section. Thus, we must shift our view and to promote the protection of the remaining 3% of old growth forests that remain in BC right now through the following 3 core ideas: logic, the intrinsic value of nature, the concept of scarcity, and a class vote. So that's kind of my 3 sections here. Actually, I guess there's 4 sections, but that's okay. My paradigm will be the 3 powerful vectors: the short story. Again, let's fix this. It's called One Pine Hill. Good. And we're going to italicize that. Grit and growth mindset as our fighting methods, and the listed persuasive tools laid out above. Are you ready for the ride? Yell, yeah, we are. And then cup. This is kind of an instruction for what I'm going to do with my body when I'm presenting. Cup your ear and get the audience to call it back. So that's a call and response, another one of our engagement techniques that we've learned. So then you can see that I've gone into starting to lay out each vector, and as I'm using different persuasive tools, I will indicate them in my notes. I've also got grit put right into the main body of vector 2. So you can see that this is this is a skill that we've used throughout the semester. You can notice I still got a little bit of work left here to do. I've got to develop that third vector, but I had a good idea for my call to action, so I will move into this last little bit here, just again being aware of our timing. Okay, we're almost there. We've established the value of old growth forest. We realize that they are dwindling. I actually need a comma here, and this makes them more valuable. Finally, so this is actually, I could even put in the idea here that this is the idea of scarcity. And finally, let's see how the class is really feeling. Let's take a vote. How many of you believe that our remaining 3% of old growth forests should be kept in the ground? And then you'd hope that you'd get consensus from the rest of the class. Okay, so that's the second section of the final exam tomorrow, will be this type of a triangulation method. So now that you've kind of looked at what our potential vectors are, you can think about which of the resources you feel most comfortable with. Do you feel like you know those biases and fallacies, logical fallacies, with strength? Do you feel like you want to incorporate our resiliency toolkit, or are you comfortable with the persuasive tools? So that's something you can kind of do tonight to prepare. And it might not be a bad idea for you to actually go through and review some of these documents and have them ready. If you want to print a physical copy of the worksheet for the 6 fallacies and 6 biases, that might not be a bad idea if you want to incorporate that into your triangulation. Or you can also write down a list in your notebook of the persuasive tools that you feel comfortable talking about or that you think are powerful that you might want to incorporate. So all of that is part of the preparation. So tomorrow, the main thing is going to come down to reading the story with skill and then using our kind of bridging techniques that we've been learning about how you take something you've read and then you're going to use our triangulation method to bridge your reading into your presentation. So that's the whole concept of this class, is reading to presenting. All right, hopefully this video has helped you to feel a little bit more confident about what you need to do tomorrow. Now finally, of course, there will be a general knowledge section and we have some example questions there. Obviously, these questions won't be on the final, but there'll be questions that are similar to these questions. All right, hopefully that makes you feel a little bit more ready. Also, of course, I will be there to support you on the day.